I've talked a lot about the great divide in the video game industry on our show, the developers, the media, and the consumer, the customer, the gamer over here. And I'll tell you what, this is a great example of just how big the divide truly is behind the people who are making the games and the people who are playing the games. It's crazy. This is a great video from our friend over at Legendary Drops. It's a great channel. He's been growing like a weed. Deserves to be. I'll put the link to the full video down below. The whole video is about 28 minutes long, but I want to highlight just the very beginning of the video, about a 7-minute clip of this. So we're going to sit down, watch this, and then I want you to go watch the rest of the video over on his channel. Once again, I'll put a link to it down below. If you're new to our channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. I'm going to do my best to find other great videos about gaming and culture that I can share with you guys here on the channel, which I usually do. Appreciate you guys. So let's check this thing out. This is Legendary Drops, talking about how gamers ruined 2024.
We have journalists that are out there that are struggling. They are coping. They are grasping at straws, trying to figure out what happened to the industry, while at the exact same time, they are painting the audience as extremists because they didn't play the games or they criticized the games in a way that they didn't appreciate. You know, one of the biggest threats that we have across the entire industry, this is probably the same for other industries as well, but it's especially true for video games, is that we have a lot of people that are out there that want to purposefully misinterpret what player criticisms or customer criticisms are for their own virtue or agenda.
Yes.
And it is having a massive impact on this industry. How many times have you guys seen somebody say something along the lines of, this is exactly what they said? And they'll put quotations around something, but they're implying what somebody said, not actually directly quoting them. This disingenuous nature of conversation, debating, and arguing just doesn't work, and it's falling flat with audiences, and it's ruining the products that we're trying to buy.
How many of you have been labeled something that you know you're not by somebody who is just projecting? We see that consistently. And we talk about that with the media, and he's going to highlight a news story that really pushes this home. One thing that he does extraordinarily well is he articulates way better than I can, which is why I very much enjoy Legendary Drops content. He does an excellent job of saying things that even though I host a podcast, I talk for a living. He does such a better job of saying what I am thinking at all times. So let's continue here.
That's the reason why a lot of players are pushing back on it. You know, I'm not going to pretend like this doesn't happen on both ends. Of course, you're seeing that from the players. Of course, you're going to see some of that stuff from the audience. But the critical difference here is that the players are a diverse group. Diversity in opinions and perspectives and life and money and all kinds of different things. And they're going to have varying degrees of what their opinions are going to look like. And the difference between these two things is that the other side of that is an industry that seems like it is monolithically standing in opposition to its audience.
And in a giant bubble, a giant insulated bubble. Man, does that cut deep. The idea that, guess what? You know what? You know, the whole Alyssa Mercante says, oh, the gaming industry was diverse. Yes, we all agree the industry is diverse. So what do you do? Why are you trying to get in the way of that? This is insane. Like, we understand the video game industry is diverse. Nobody's complaining about it being diverse. We're complaining about forced diversity, forced projection into these games. The idea that you are putting yourself into these games, these self-inserts. Nobody wants that. Nobody has asked for that. And that seems like all we've got. And I understand when I say that's all we've got. No, it's not all we've gotten. We've got some great games in 2024. But the biggest losers have been games that have forced this nonsense into it. And man, that's a great statement. Yes, gamers are diverse. We are the diverse ones. That's the most fascinating thing about this whole thing. Oh my gosh.
But maybe I'm wrong. So today what we're going to do is we're going to find out why the players are the ones that are at fault for the fallout of 2024. As I sat in an airport waiting for my flight, excited to visit my family for the holidays, reflecting on how incredible of a year 2024 was for video games, I came across this article from TheWire.com titled 2024 was the year that the bottom fell out of the video game industry. From layoffs to the return of Gamergate, video games and the people who make and play them had a rough year. And I thought to myself, well, that's a tad dramatic. I mean, yeah, we saw some massive layoffs, cancellations, and closures across the industry, and it was arguably one of the most divisive years in gaming. However, 2024, while tumultuous, was an incredible year across the board. Indie games reached unheard of heights, and independent AA and
Balatro sold 3.5 million copies. Like It's a game. It's a card game. It's a card game. Launched over 3.5 million copies. Ridiculous. Blackman's Wukong. But once again, hey, despite their successes, we can look past these developers' shortcomings. Oh, sure.
AAA studios dominated the entire year. Steam updated their policies to protect their customers from rug-pull DLC and roadmaps. California forced publishers and studios to plainly state that customers do not own what they are buying. 2024 was a step forward for consumers, but apparently that isn't where our priorities should be. Megan Farakmanesh of TheWire.com writes, for the people who make games, 2024 was a year of holding on for dear life. At the annual Game Developer Conference in March, survive till 25 was this year's incantation, summoned to keep morale on pace. Others resorted to full-on screams as layoffs in the industry charted record highs and developers found themselves under attack online for conspiratorial nonsense.
Oh, yeah.
In
2020, we talked about that on the show, and one of the things that we discussed was potentially going to GDC 2025. Do you think we should? Should I go to GDC? Should we send some correspondents out there to ask hard questions? I think it's important that we do. Now, I tried you have to register for GDC I think by September, 6 months before the event. It's crazy. But I'm going to do my best to get out there, I think. I don't know. Let me know. Should we head to GDC? Should we talk to these developers? Should we get them to scream into microphones to relieve their pain? I think we should.
2023, more than 10,000 developers lost their jobs. 1/3 of game makers surveyed at the beginning of the year reported that they had been affected by layoffs in some way. While there were some wins for labor organizers at big studios like Activision Blizzard and collective action around fighting for protection from the encroachment of AI on employment, the industry's collective brain drain continued in 2024 as workers lost jobs en masse. 6 months in, this year's layoff tally had already surpassed that of 2023. According to Matthew Ball, an advisor and producer for the games and television space, 2024's job loss count will wind up being about 40% higher than the previous years.
And here's a spoiler. 2025, it's probably going to go up even more. Just saying. We may see Ubisoft just dissolve entirely. Just poof, right up into smoke.
The explanation is complex and wide-ranging for the same reasons the layoffs are so deep and continuous, and sit alongside many studio closures and even more canceled games, Ball says. Developers are under attack for conspiratorial nonsense, and they're trying to figure out why games are failing. You guys aren't seeing the correlation here? Let's look at the games and then look at the layoffs. Outside of Hi-Fi Rush, many of the studios that released games that fell flat with audiences fell flat for countless reasons that are pretty obvious to everybody else. Meanwhile, all of these publishers are investing obscene amounts of money into these projects. What do they think the recourse is for that money lost? When these studios and these publishers are investing $200 to $300 million into a single game, if not more, we're not even talking about marketing budget, do you think that Microsoft is just going to accept the hit for Redfall, that Sony's just going to accept the $400 million wasted on Concord, that Ubisoft, who's been unable to turn a profit on damn near anything for years now, is somehow not going to have any repercussions for that?
I'm going to answer that question. Of course not. It comes down to money. It always comes down to money. And if we said it once, we'll say it a million times. The market will decide. The market decided on Concord. The market decided on Dustborn. The market is deciding constantly on Ubisoft. And the market will always win. The gamer, the customer will always decide the winners and losers. Despite the propaganda, despite the glad handing behind the scenes, the come to my event and I'll get you codes, or I'll get you this nice jacket, or I'll get you a gut full of food for the weekend if you come over and review my game. Dude, this happens all the time. And despite it, the media landscape has changed. It has changed. Access media is dead. The traditional way to filter news to gamers is gone. And now it's X. It's social media. It's TikTok. It's YouTube. It's shows like Side Scrollers that relay this information to people who don't trust access media. So yeah, what are we doing? Of course, all this.
What's the conspiracy here?
There it is.
I'm sick and tired of games media treating industry layoffs as some sort of surprise tragedy. conveniently ignoring the root cause that these companies failed to deliver on their customers' needs and the publishers over budgeted on those projects and set unrealistic sales projections.
So blame the
The
gamer.
reality is simple. These players are not buying these games that are poorly made, uninspired, or designed for audiences that don't exist.
Yay!
Studios have spent years now chasing fleeting trends, pushing live service games that are riddled with microtransactions, and prioritizing their ideological messaging over the quality or meaningfulness of the content they're supposed to be delivering.
Woo.
When these games flop, it's no mystery why. There's no conspiracy here. This is an industry that's not under attack from external forces. It's sabotaging itself through greed, ego, and tone-deaf decision-making.
Stop. Brr, 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 brr. Let's go. Oh my God. What a freaking mic drop of a rant. And we're only 6 minutes into the video. Yes, he nails everything about it. It's the snake eating its own tail. Is that what the old saying is? Yes, of course it is.
You know, one of the other things that really bothers me is the special treatment that the games industry gets, the layoffs and closures. These aren't unique to just gaming.
No.
Every single industry is facing economic challenges right now
Yes.
because, well, people are facing economic challenges right now. The tech sector saw 141,000 jobs lost. Manufacturing saw 17,000 jobs lost. Retail, 4,800, and many more sectors saw the same. What is unique in gaming is that this is largely self-inflicted. Companies like Ubisoft, Microsoft, Sony, and more have consistently wasted their resources on bloated projects, garbage games, ideological soapboxes, and live service games that nobody was asking for, while ignoring their core audience. These layoffs are the inevitable result of poor leadership and decisions that were prioritizing quick profits and ego over player satisfaction. Studios aren't failing because of bad luck. They're failing because they've stopped making games that people care about. As a customer, I'm going to be honest, I just don't care or feel anything for any of these internal struggles that these companies go through, especially when it's mismanagement to blame. The industry's decline is a natural consequence of treating customers like an afterthought. If studios want to survive, well, they need to stop chasing trends, stop alienating their core audiences, and start focusing on making great games. The problem isn't the market or the players, it's the industry itself. Please show me an example of a studio, a great studio that released a successful game, that performed well day one, that sold really well, that delivered and exceeded players' expectations. They prioritized the players' needs, and then they ended up having layoffs. You can't. Because it doesn't exist. Because successful games make successful studios, which keeps people in business.
All right. So we're going to stop there. That's 8 minutes in. There's 20 more minutes of this, but I want to, he did such a great job of talking about this. And it's just banger after banger after banger in this video. But he talks about, the idea of this is the industry's fault, and they want to pass the blame on to you. And it does start with leadership. That's the thing. There's tons. That's the thing we need to think about here. There's tons, literally tons of great people working in this industry who don't want anything to do with everything that's being thrown here. This ideological throwdown, this thought process of going into live service games. They know. They've grown up playing games. They've grown up making games. And unfortunately, a lot of those people have been pushed out over the last 2, 3, 4 years. They may have lost their jobs. They may have been pushed out, either one. And that's the sad part. He talked about the other industries here, the other industries that have suffered. They're 100% correct. But we are seeing a cultural shift now. And I've said this before, and once again, I'll say this again. I honestly feel like the video game industry will be the last industry to truly catch up when it comes to the ideological and cultural shift. We've seen Facebook and Meta. We talked about that today on our show. The idea that there's a cultural shift now. They're pulling back the reins on their censorship. People see what's coming. And unfortunately, I think the video game industry is going to be the last industry to adjust because it is so deeply faulted from a management perspective all the way down to the community management roles. And you just got to cut the head off the snake at this point. You really do. I'm not saying the industry needs to die. It does not. But you need to get all the ideologues out and fucking middle management. My God, middle management. Listen, that's a bigger conversation outside of the video game industry. Well, we all know, look, there are executives who make bad decisions. And then there are middle management people who want to have their own stamp on things so they can, and they fuck it up even more. Then by the time it gets down to the lowly guy down here, it's all sorts of screwed up. Anyways, It's a great video. I encourage you to go check it out. Once again, the link is down below. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button right here. Go watch another video right here. And of course, go check out the Legendary Drops channel. Great channel.